The screen fades in from black. The faint sound of jet engines hums against a quiet dawn sky. Slowly, the camera pans across the vast stretch of asphalt, where rows of aircraft stand like sleeping giants. The first rays of sun strike their wings, casting sharp shadows across the tarmac. The narrator's voice cuts through the silence, steady and cinematic. Not every hero fights where the cameras point. Some live in the margins, hidden in the hum of engines, the scrape of wrenches, the silence between missions. Their stories are quiet until one day they're not. The camera finds her, a lone figure walking across the flight line, boots scuffed, coveralls streaked with grease, hair pulled back into a tight braid. Her uniform wasn't pressed sharp like the officers who passed through here. Her medals weren't pinned for all to see, but her presence carried weight, even if most didn't notice. Sergeant Maya Torres, aircraft mechanic, daughter of immigrants, soldier whose name had never made a headline. Maya had never asked for glory. She believed in bolts tightened to spec, in checklists followed without fail, in promises kept through the language of machinery. To her, every aircraft was more than metal. Every rivet mattered, because every plane carried lives, and she couldn't bear the thought of a soldier not coming home because of something she missed. Her job, most said, was routine. Engines tuned, hydraulics inspected, fuel tanks flushed. Routine, until it wasn't. 6 months earlier, Afghanistan. The night had been still at Bagram Air Base. Warm winds carried dust across the hangar floor. Maya was off shift, stripped down to her undershirt, wiping grease from her hands after a 14-hour day. The squadron was prepping for a medvac drop into the mountains, one of those missions where supplies weren't just boxes, they were lifelines. She was about to crash onto her cot when the sirens wailed. Incoming rockets. The ground shook as the first explosion struck beyond the perimeter. Soldiers sprinted for cover. Warnings blasted through loudspeakers. Maya didn't think. She grabbed her tools, because on the runway, lit by floodlights, Falcon 6, a C-130 medvac transport, sat vulnerable, fully loaded. Its hydraulics had failed just as it was about to taxi. The pilot's voice over comms was frantic. "We're dead in the water. Hydraulic pressure 0. I can't move." If Falcon 6 didn't launch, an entire unit pinned in the mountains would die waiting for supplies. Maya ran into the fire. The camera zooms in as rockets impact in the distance, spraying dirt and steel across the tarmac. Maya drops flat, then scrambles forward on hands and knees. She slides beneath the belly of the C-130, wrench in hand, sparks flying as she rips open a panel. Her hands move on instinct. Hydraulic fluid leaks like blood. She reroutes lines, clamps pressure, bypasses an actuator. Each second feels stolen from death itself. The pilot's voice cracks through the headset. "Sergeant, we can't wait. We're aborting." Maya's voice cuts him off, firm, commanding in a way she rarely let herself sound. "Not yet. Give me 60 seconds. You'll have wings. Just stay with me." A rocket slams into the far edge of the runway. The shockwave throws her against the fuselage. Her head throbs, but her hands don't stop. She reroutes the last line, tightens the final bolt, slams the panel shut. She slaps the fuselage twice and yells into the comm. "Falcon 6, you're good. Go. Go now." The engines roar to life. Dust swirls. As the aircraft thunders forward, Maya crawls clear, her body bruised, lungs burning. The C-130 rises into the night sky, carrying supplies and hope into the mountains. She lies on the tarmac, staring up at the stars, too dazed to feel the cut bleeding across her temple. All she feels is relief. Falcon 6 was airborne. The men in the mountains would live, and no one would ever know what she had done. Back stateside, the report later filed simply read, "Maintenance correction during attack. No mention of rockets. No mention of the risk. No mention of her." That was fine, she told herself. Mechanics weren't heroes. Heroes were the ones with rifles, with ribbons, with stories sung in documentaries. Her work was invisible by design. If she did her job right, no one noticed. So, months later, stationed back in the U.S., Maya carried on. Early mornings, late nights, wrenches, grease, checklists, a face in the background, until the day everything changed. The salute. It was an ordinary afternoon. The hangar buzzed with the sound of drills and engines. Maya was crouched by the landing gear of a C-17, tightening bolts, sweat dripping into her eyes. A convoy of black vehicles pulled up outside. Officers spilled out, starched uniforms, polished boots. She barely looked up. Important people came and went. Mechanics weren't expected to care. But then, the hangar went strangely quiet. Footsteps approached. She turned, annoyed to be interrupted mid-job. A general stood before her, distinguished, decorated. His ribbons told stories entire books couldn't hold. She straightened instinctively, wiping grease from her hands. Before he could speak, the general removed his cap, and he saluted her. The entire hangar froze. Pilots, mechanics, officers, they all stared. A general saluting a grease-stained sergeant? Impossible! Maya blinked, confused. "Sir?" The general's voice was steady, but heavy with memory. 6 months ago, Falcon 6, you were the one under the fuselage. She felt the breath leave her chest. He was the pilot, the man whose voice had begged to abort, the man she'd kept alive in the sky. He continued, loud enough for every soldier in the hangar to hear. "I flew because of you. My men lived because of you. "I salute you, Sergeant Torres, not for your duty, but for your courage." Gasps rippled through the room. Mechanics who had teased her for living in Greece stood straighter. Pilots who had brushed past her now looked with new respect. Officers who had never known her name whispered it to one another. Maya's throat tightened. She shook her head. "Sir, I was just doing my job." The general didn't lower his salute. "No, you went beyond your job. You ran into fire when no one asked you to. You gave us wings when we were grounded. That's not a job. That's valor." Recognition. Word spread through the base like wildfire. The sergeant in coveralls, the mechanic always seen with tools in hand, wasn't just a mechanic. She was the reason Falcon 6 had lifted off under fire. Commanders came to shake her hand. Pilots thanked her with voices that cracked. Young recruits watched her with wide eyes. For months, she had carried the weight alone, hidden under the title Maintenance Correction. Now her story was finally being told, not through paperwork, but through respect. A week later, the general returned, this time alone. He found her in the hangar, wiping down a wrench. "Sergeant, I put in a recommendation." She frowned. "For what, sir?" He met her eyes. "For the Silver Star." Her heart stopped. The Silver Star, awarded for gallantry in combat. Mechanics didn't get Silver Stars. She opened her mouth to protest, but he cut her off. "You're not invisible, Torres. Not anymore." The stage. The camera cuts to weeks later. A ceremony hall filled with soldiers. Flags ripple in silence. The announcer's voice echoes. "For gallantry in action, Sergeant Maya Torres." She walks to the stage. Coveralls traded for dress uniform. The medal is pinned to her chest. Applause thunders through the hall. But her mind drifts, not to the stage, not to the applause, but back to that night. Rockets falling, sparks flying, her hands inside the belly of Falcon 6, whispering to herself, "Stay with me, stay with me." The screen slows, images flash, her grease-stained hands tightening bolts, the roar of engines, the general's salute. The narrator's voice returns, deep and resonant. Sometimes the world hides its heroes in plain sight. Sometimes the quietest posts, the simplest duties, hold the heaviest stories. Sergeant Maya Torres was only fixing planes until the night she saved them, and on that day, the salute of a general told the world what the paperwork never could. The screen fades to black. Behind every uniform, there's a story worth telling.